Have you ever had one of those moments where just one night, one conversation, hearing one person's story completely changed the course of your life? Well, that is exactly what happened with Kareena Shaw. Not only did it change her career, her focus, it meant that she travelled to the other side of the world to make a difference. You're going to hear all of that as she talks about the incredible work of the Barbara May Foundation. Today on Towards Understanding. G'day, Kareena.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And it's quite a full circle moment for me, actually, because I know that you were quite inspired by Dr. Andrew Browning, and we'll hear a bit of that story in a moment to do some of the work that you've done. We had him on the show a few years ago, and a few years before that, we had Valerie Browning on, who inspired him. So this is really great to be able to hear a bit more of the ongoing impact. So let's talk a little bit about that. You have been a nurse and have been a nurse for quite a while, actually, before you heard Dr. Andrew Browning. Tell us a little bit about, I suppose, the reason that you got into nursing in the first place.
Sure. So I became a nurse when I was 18. I grew up rural New South Wales in a little village called Dunedoo. And I came to the big smoke and became a registered nurse because I just had a heart for caring and healing people. And then fast forward many years, about 25 years, and my husband came home from work, and I just got home from work, and my husband said, "Oh, honey," he said, "I've got this guest speaker coming to speak at the library at Erina, but I've got no one to do the tea and coffee." He said, "Can you help us out?" And of course, me being a loving, Christian, wonderful woman, said, "You've got to be joking. I just got home from work." So this poor man was given the absolute silent treatment the whole way to the event. And the guest speaker was Dr. Andrew Browning. Well, oh my goodness, I sat absolutely mesmerised by, this man's incredible journey and the women that were suffering so terribly around the world from preventable things, and children, dying from preventable things. And so at the end of the presentation, I waited until everybody had gone, and I went up to Dr. Andrew and I said, "Do you have any use for a registered nurse with 20 years experience?" He said, "Oh, look, I'm really sorry." He said, "No, I actually need midwives, not nurses." And I said, "Oh, shame." And then he said, "And once you get your qualification," he said, "you need 2 years experience. Not for the reasons that you think." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You need to have 2 years experience post-grad of delivering healthy, wonderful babies here in Australia in order for you to cope with all of the dead ones that you'll be delivering in Ethiopia." And I took that home, and then a few weeks later, I was reading a book which was talking about the fistula hospitals that Dr. Andrew Browning had been working with, and there was a statement that said, "We don't need more fistula hospitals, we need more midwives on the ground." I didn't even finish the book. I just put the book down, went straight to the computer, and I enrolled to become a midwife with the sole purpose of volunteering with Dr. Andrew's work. Oh, and then I told my husband.
Well, what a remarkable moment of how this came about. So, I mean, that's a journey in itself, right? Like, here you are committed and this multiple change in it. Take us through that journey of being a midwife, and then I suppose the experience that was required as you headed over. And we want to talk a little bit about, for those who may not know, what is fistula, why is that important? But let's just stay on your part of the journey first.
Yeah, sure. So, yes, I studied at Hornsby Hospital for a year, and then I did 2 years postgrad, and met some incredible women in my journey, and I was a little bit nervous about the very first hospital that I was asked to volunteer with. So I did my 2 years post-experience. And this little hospital, originally Andrew had the thought of placing an expat obstetrician and a midwife into a public hospital where the mother mortality rate was quite high. And so that was what the volunteer program looked like at the very beginning. This was in 2012. So the very first hospital that we volunteered in was in Mota. It had a population in 2012 of 44,000 people. And the little midwifery unit that they had there, it was just, a long corridor, nightingale type ward. They were losing between 20 and 30 mothers every few months. And this little public hospital had no running water and unreliable electricity. So the program was there for 3 years. I didn't stay for 3 years. I'd stay for 3 months, and then the next midwife would come. And the obstetricians, they tend to stay for 4 weeks, and then they would return to their country and another would come. So there was lots of training and upskilling and putting infrastructure in place. And the staff are just incredible. They're so hungry for knowledge. And after 3 years, Barbara May Foundation then pulled out of this little hospital in Mota and then went to another public hospital. My husband and I returned to Mota some years later, and the lead midwife remembered me, and he came running out and he said, Kareena, he said, we haven't lost a mother in a year.
Just incredible. What you must have just been beside yourself during that moment.
Well, if ever I needed motivation to give up whatever life looks like for us here in Australia, there it is. It's sustainable, absolutely sustainable by the locals. So then the journey went, Dr. Andrew was given funding to actually build a brand new facility. The first one was in Bahada, and Andrew also performed fistula repair. So just a statistic for you, currently a woman dies every 2 minutes from pregnancy-related causes. That's right now. And 99% of those deaths occur in developing countries. 50% of those deaths occur in sub-Sahara, and that is where the Barbara May Foundation maternity facilities are located. For every mother that dies, another 20 women suffer from a birthing injury like an obstetric fistula. So I think Andrew explained what a obstetric fistula was with your interview with him. So just to recap, lots of women in Ethiopia have a very narrow outlet for the baby to be born through, the bony outlet. So here in Australia, it's a nice, 10 centimetres. And so, very rarely do you have a true obstructed labour where the baby's just not going to fit. But in Ethiopia, it's much, much higher because the shape of the outlet is slightly oval. So these mamas, they're birthing at home by themselves in a mud hut, or they might have a traditional birthing attendant with them, and they'll try to push this stuck baby out for 1 or 2 days. And then they'll probably say, oh, I think we need to start the journey to get medical help. And one of the largest reasons that the mother mortality rate is so high is because they just don't have access to maternal care. So we had one woman in Bahadar who actually walked with a stuck baby in labour for 3 days to get to us to help her. That's 100 kilometres she walked barefoot. So what happens with these women who have these stuck babies is that a small part of the bladder can get trapped between the baby's head and the bony pelvis. And that soft tissue is starved of oxygen and nutrients, and it forms an ulcer, which eventually forms a hole. So it can either be soft tissue from the bladder or soft tissue from the bowel. And it means that when the baby's actually removed, there's now a hole leaking directly from her bladder or her bowel through her vagina. So this woman leaks urine and feces. It's an absolute tragedy for her because they stink. And so their husbands often leave them and they are ostracised from their village. Dr. Andrew Browning specialises in repairing these obstetric related to birth fistula holes. And so any of the new facilities that Dr. Andrew has built, yes, there's free maternal care, there's antenatal care, there is delivery suites, there are theatres for performing caesareans if necessary, but there's also theatres where Andrew visits and performs free fistula repair surgery. And these women's lives have transformed from being absolutely ostracised to being returned to their village, and many of their husbands return as well.
It must be a remarkable moment of transformation. So we're going to be back in a couple of minutes' time as we hear a bit more about some of what it actually means after these surgeries, what it means in a culture and a society with one of the ambassadors for the Barbara May Foundation, Kareena Shaw. We've heard about her experience. We're going to talk a bit more about the ongoing impact of this work next here on Towards Understanding.
Share your brand, your event, your message across 90 Christian radio stations and major cities in Australia and New Zealand by sponsoring Towards Understanding, hosted by Clayton Bielen. More than 210,000 people tune into Towards Understanding each week, and with just one sponsorship, you'll reach this immense engaged audience. Find out more about this exciting and unique opportunity now on the sponsorship page at positivemedia.com.au.
I'm assuming, Kareena, we sort of talked about this idea there that says, well, the surgeries are so important. I want to hear the ongoing impact, especially culturally for families around that. What sort of work is being done around the idea of saying, well, how do we actually help women as well not be trying to labour for 3 or 4 days? I'm assuming more of the hospitals, more of the education is helping with that. But is there a way to actually help them, mostly in, I suppose, Western countries, that caesarean tends to be that help in the first place? How are things going now in many parts of Africa?
They make significant inroads. So in 2018, Dr. Andrew Browning was given funding to build a brand new maternity facility with the ability to run fistula camps where 50 women will come and Dr. Andrew will operate over 10 days. And it was in Tanzania, just outside Arusha. So that was in 2018. I revisited there last year in October, and they reported very excitedly that they have 4,000 safe births a year at this facility, meeting the needs of the women from the Maasai tribe. And, these women are amongst the poorest of the poor, and so they just don't have access to maternal care. You also have, culturally, they're very reliant upon traditional birthing attendants. So culturally, it's taken 7 years for them to go to Kivulini. You can have safe birth. So, by going to Kivulini, they can also receive really excellent antenatal care. We have an ultrasound, and we have 2 doctors there who are local doctors that have actually been trained and upskilled by the visiting obstetricians. And so if you have a history of obstructed labour and a deceased baby, then, you're highlighted as someone that we really need to keep an eye on. And so you'll be looked after closer, and then you will be asked to come when the baby is closer to being due. And you can stay at the hospital, and so that you'll either try and have a safe birth, or they'll actually book in a caesarean section. Culturally, for these women, often they're with us for many weeks while they recover from having obstetric fistula repair. And so they're taught skills. So there's a sewing room there, which is non-electricity sewing machines. And so the women are actually taught how to sew. They sew reusable pads for menstruating girls or women post-delivery. Many of the women in the Maasai tribe don't own underwear. And so to have underwear and reusable pads post-delivery is just a game changer for them. And they have this skill that many of the sewing machines are then donated, and they have this small micro business that they can start. Another business that they're taught while they're healing is to make peanut butter, and then they're put into small packets and they sell them in roadside little shops. The other beautiful thing about the women who come for fistula repair is that they're just there for each other. It's just beautiful. So if the woman has had a baby and this baby's actually survived, and the mama is now having fistula repair, then one of the other mothers will actually care for the baby while mama's having surgery. They're just beautiful. And often the mamas will actually, in Ethiopia, when Dr. Andrew Browning built a new facility in Bahada, there were 2 operating theatres, and the mamas would just lie side by side in the operating theatres, and you would have a mama who'd already had a fistula repair sitting with them, chatting to them while they had a spinal anaesthetic and they had their procedure. So it's just beautiful. And then they get a lovely new dress, and when they go home, they're welcomed back into their village. Welcome home, daughter. It's a game changer. It's just restoring their dignity.
Wonderful. I love that, and I think as you talked about the work of that too, that there's this one aspect that as we live in Australia and New Zealand, that we can sort of understand maybe the surgery part of it. We can understand what that might mean. We can understand the better healthcare and trying to work with people to understand that. But the deep idea of what you're talking about there, that this cultural change, this acceptance back into culture, this ability to actually have, not, as you talked about before, not be leaking, and so therefore not be ashamed in this society, and actually being able to step into things. It is changing, not just for the woman, but also for the family as well, isn't it?
Yes, yep, absolutely. And then they become such fantastic advocates for the program. So they say, Mama, you don't have to live like this, and Barbara May has this entire, fistula outreach program where they sort of go out into all these remote villages and, recruit women for surgery, and they pay for the bus fare, and at Kivulini they just go to, and it was just beautiful. So we're sitting in a chapel, and the director of the hospital, who is a local doctor, and she says, okay, everybody, we have 50 mamas arriving over the next 2 weeks. Please make them feel welcomed. Please extend your love. We want them to feel loved and safe. And I don't know any organisation where a director is going to say that to the staff. It's pretty unique, very, very special.
Yeah. It's wonderful. What can people here in Australia and New Zealand do as we go, all right, well, I'm I'm not a nurse, and I'm not a nurse who
Yep.
could then trade into a midwife like you did. That's not what I
Yep.
can do. But I care about this issue, or I want to make a difference. What are
Yes.
things people can actually do?
Oh, absolutely. Look, we always need financial support. You know, the Barbara May Foundation are not only, building these safe, free facilities for the women, they're also paying all the staff wages. They're also paying for all of the equipment, and that costs money. So, any donation towards the Barbara May Foundation goes to help these women in safe childbirth and, fistula repair. So, and prayers, all of the facilities that Barbara May Foundation set up, they're always Christian-based, and they just extend such hope to these women. I mean, these women are our sisters. I did nothing to be born in Australia. She did nothing to be born in extreme poverty. And so the philosophy is always with Barbara May Foundation to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so if, praying for the success and for the safety, many of the countries that the Barbara May Foundation has these beautiful maternity facilities are experiencing war and unrest. So it places everybody at risk. So, yes, prayers and financial support is huge, not possible without it.
Love that. If you'd like to read up more information or indeed donate, it's barbaramayfoundation.com. Simple as that, barbaramayfoundation.com. Kareena, it has been an absolute privilege hearing your story and the work that is happening, and also just your passion for this as well. So we thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
You're very welcome, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Kareena Shaw is an ambassador for the Barbara May Foundation, and I'm sure you'll agree is doing some remarkable work around our world. We've been listening here on Towards Understanding.